Welcome back to the channel, guys. So if that beginning panel looked a little bit different, that is because after I passed my first major milestone of the year, which was 1,000 subscribers, I went ahead and I opened up my own Discord and my own Patreon, and I've already had a couple patrons, so that is super awesome. I am so grateful for anybody that's willing to even support the channel in any way. So I love all my subscribers and also my patrons and everybody that's joining the Discord. Obviously, it is going to be slow growing. This is my first actual announcement in video form. I did announce it on my community tab, but I understand a lot of people are in dozens of Discords, so it's going to be slow growing, but hopefully you will all join me there and let's talk about some books. Today, though, I am going to be reviewing Night's Shadow, which is book 2 of the Greatcoats series by Sebastien de Castell. So this is part of a ongoing read-along with Mike's Book Reviews, who is doing this read-along for the Greatcoats, and I'm participating in that. So Night's Shadow is a fantastic follow-up to Traitor's Blade, which was one of my favorite books that I've read this year. I thought everything in that book, yes, it had some problems. Yes, it uses some Deus Ex Machina that didn't really feel, mostly earned in a way that it does more so in Night's Shadow. But the flaws were very, very overshadowed by the good parts of that book, and I really, really loved it. I've seen a ton of other YouTubers talk about this book and people in Discord really hyping this book up and this series as a whole, and I'm just glad that I joined this read-along because I would not have even known about the series had it not been for Mike and his channel, so thank you, Mike. But these books have been great so far, but let's talk about Night's Shadow a little bit. So this will be spoiler-free. So in this world, if you have not watched my Traitor's Blade review, please go do that right here. Just quick synopsis. This is following the same cast of characters, so you have Falcio, Kest, and Brasti, who are the main Greatcoats, and you're following them immediately after the ending of book 1, which is nice. There's no downtime, there's no, massive time jump, anything like that. So you're following them immediately after the conclusion of book 1. There are two female characters that have now joined the group There are now two main characters that are female that have joined the Greatcoats crew in this book, and that is Viliana and Dariana. So both of these characters introduce new dynamics to this crew, who I already loved from the beginning, and I'm happy to say that I also love these new characters. They add a lot to the books. They are not just a copy and paste of other characters that already exist in the world. They are dynamic. Every character in this book, honestly, has their own drive, has their own ambition, and really is their own character. The way that Sebastien de Castell writes these characters, you really see their personalities shine through. And I appreciate that so much because characters really make or break a story for me. And whereas in the past, I've really harped on books for not really having a plot and being too focused on characters, I would watch these characters do just about anything. They are hilarious. The dialogue is fantastic between them. Some of the funniest laugh out loud moments happen in these books. I haven't laughed this much reading a book in ever, and these aren't even comedies, but there's so many good comedic beats that Sebastien de Castell hits on, and unlike some other authors whose humor doesn't really land very often, Sanderson, these books land almost every time, and there are some seriously funny moments. This isn't a spoiler, but there's a particular moment in the book where our main character, Falcio, is talking with somebody else who keeps pronouncing his name Falcio. And he keeps reiterating, like, it's Falcio, it's Falcio, it's not Falcio. And the guy's like, okay, Falcio. He's like, all right, I'm going to kill him. There's so many great moments in these books, and this book specifically, that made me actually laugh out loud. Now, the counter to that is this book gets dark as shit as well. So there are some certain points in this where I thought Joe Abercrombie was starting to write this, or Pierce Brown. I mean, this book took a dark turn quite a few times, and it was pretty heavy at times. There is more, I'd say, violence than the first book. There is definitely rape and murder and torture. I mean, there's some dark crap in this book, man. But it's written well, it's handled well, it's purposeful to the story. You really get to see why it's included in the story. And a lot of it, of course, since you are seeing everything through Falcio's eyes, it is very, very impactful to his overall story. So from a character perspective, again, the characters are great. They're dynamic. They're hilarious to watch. And they're all fantastic in these dialogue moments throughout. They're great during battles and combat. They all have like their specialty. So like Kest is great with a sword. He's kind of like one of the best swordsmen to ever live. Brasti is fantastic with a bow. He kind of sucks with hand-to-hand combat. And Falcio is known for his double rapiers that he uses. He's great in combat. He's great at talking trash to people that he fights. And just this band of characters are just fantastic to follow. For the most part, I like the villains. Some of them get a little bit mustache twirly at times, for sure. But, I mean, some of the crap that the villains do in this book is truly dark and twisted and messed up. And it's a lot of times. But it's done really well, and I love Sebastian's writing. It's very approachable. There's no flowery purple prose here. This is pretty straightforward. It's very easy to digest. Like, this book was 600 pages, which is about 200 or so longer than Traitor's Blade. It didn't feel that length at all. This was not like reading an epic fantasy dense book. This flew by. And I think I read it in a couple of days because it was so engaging, so entertaining. The pacing is spot on. There's really never a dull moment in this book. There's no like long chapters or long-winded paragraphs of info dumping or tangents or like side quests. Like, this is very much Falcio's story, and you see that throughout the entire thing. What is really fantastic about these characters too is that they don't really go against their personality or like how they would actually act, because what I've seen in other books happen before is a character is written a certain way and they have certain values that they strive for, and there's certain scenes where like a character might act against their character, almost as if the author forgot who they were writing the character for. These characters do not do that. So I appreciate that greatly, because Falcio has his faults. He has these issues where he wants so badly for the world to be just and right, and he fights so hard to keep that, to his detriment almost. And I love that about him, because there are situations where if he just wasn't so righteous or cared so much about justice, if he really just wanted to, kill somebody or just do something that could just end what's happening to this world, he could take it into his own hands and do it, but he won't. And he won't do it because he cares so much about King Palus from book 1 and what he believed he wanted for this world of Tristia, that he just can't do it. It's like, it's right there. He could end everything right now. He could kill the bad guy, save the world, and he just won't do it. There's other times where he'll do that and his crewmates are like, no, we could end this right now. We have to do this. And he's like, that's not what the king wanted. That's not what we're about. We're Greatcoats. We don't do that. And that makes him such a good character and strong protagonist to follow. And he impacts this mentality basically on everybody around him. So even characters that wouldn't normally act that way themselves, if Falcio wasn't there, do it because of him. He's so just and so right and wants so badly for the world to just be a better place and basically get them out from under the boot of all these greedy, rich dukes that don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. And he really starts to draw people into that mentality, and that's awesome to watch. Another great thing that I love about this book in particular is it expands more on Kest and Brasti, even though the book is told through Falcio's eyes, and he does take his brief moments to go second person and kind of talk to the camera kind of thing. But even though it's focused on him, you learn a lot more about Brasti. You learn a lot more about Kest and his background. You learn so much about these other side characters that even though you spend less time with them, you learn to love them all, basically. And they're all interesting, and I love to follow this cast of characters. Now, a couple of the negatives that you'll hear a lot from book 1 are flashbacks. There are significantly less of those in this book. So basically that second person thing that I was talking about is Falcio will kind of look at the camera and be like, okay, so here's what happened, or here's why this is happening, or here's why I think this way, and then it kind of jumps to a flashback to explain it, and then it comes back to what's happening. That was toned down a lot in this book, so that complaint is mostly gone. The other complaint, mostly that I hear about book 1 and less so about this book, that I totally agree with, while it didn't bother me in book 1, there was an overuse of Deus Ex Machina, or just plot conveniences in general, that were not explained. So things would just kind of happen, people would just appear at the right place at the right time, or like an army would show up to save the day kind of thing that you're not really told about or like explained beforehand. This book does a lot better at foreshadowing those types of events and really building up a reason for it to happen. Whereas in the first book, they would just be, it's like, oh no, the party's screwed unless something saves them, and then something's here. None of that was here without reason. It always had a point, and there was always at least a little bit of information that led up to it that was like, okay, that makes sense. It didn't feel cheap because it didn't come completely out of left field. The action continues to be fantastic in these books. They kicked it up a notch in book 2. I love the way that Sebastien de Castell writes combat. I love how he's delving a little bit more into the magic of the world. It is still very, very vague. Like, this is not a magic forward story. This is very much a soft magic system that is very far in the back seat of this story. None of our main cast are magic users. There's no wizards. There's no, like, in-your-face kind of magic. This is not something like allomancy. I don't even know what to compare this to. This is almost just, like, more a Song of Ice and Fire-ish, maybe, but I think even that has more magic in it, but it's more obscure. It's kind of in the background. Falcio will let you know repeatedly that he hates magic, which is kind of why it's not in the story much, because you follow Falcio. So when someone does use it, it's usually pretty subtle. So this is very much what it was marketed as, which was a Three Musketeers style adventure tale. And then I'd say this really stepped up more of the grimdark aspects, where kind of like a Joe Abercrombie meets Three Musketeers really makes sense for this one specifically. Because like I said, it gets dark. Cannot wait to continue this story. It is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. It's fast-paced. It does get dark, so if certain things that I mentioned turn you off from it, that will be prevalent here. But these books are great, man. More people need to read these. They're fantastic. Go read these books. They're great. So that is going to wrap up my spoiler-free thoughts on Night Shadow. I cannot wait to get to book 3 and 4 of this series, but I will hold off. I will keep pace with the read-along and not jump ahead. I've got a bunch of other stuff to catch up on anyway, so please like and subscribe. As always, hop in the Discord, join the Patreon if you want to. Absolutely no pressure. But until next time, everybody, keep reading.